Welcome back to the GSMC Chip Shot Football Podcast to get into a new segment here around Brandon Aiyuk and what his contract situation is sort of looking like with the San Francisco 49ers. There's been a lot of talk recently, not that much movement, but up until now, it's been pretty just bare right now in terms of the news coming out on Brandon Aiyuk. But for right now, on Friday, some more development on this topic. The On ESPN's recent episode of NFL Live last week on Friday, ESPN's Jeremy Fowler revealed a possible target price for Brandon Aiyuk, and it has to do somewhat with who you see on your screen, Amon-Ra St. Brown, telling the crew there on the NFL Live, in his words, that San Francisco, with Brandon Aiyuk, they have been talking, they have been negotiating, nothing imminent as of yet, but there's a certain chance that this could happen. I was told the benchmark here is Amon-Ra St. Brown because he got $28 million per year on a 4-year deal from Detroit. The goal, as it appears, is for Brandon Aiyuk to try and beat that, according to ESPN's Jeremy Fowler. And so we kind of got a parameter of what this deal could sort of look like, what Brandon Aiyuk is trying to achieve here. Because up to this point, honestly, I feel like nobody really knew where these things stand. You know, Brandon Aiyuk's been sort of cryptic online, has unfollowed the team, has put his stuff on his story, but his manager and himself have stressed that they haven't requested a trade, so it's still pretty much in a gray area. Now we kind of get a bit more clarity as to posing some more hard-hitting questions around this. You know, the main one for me is Brandon Aiyuk a $30 million wide receiver? And with Amon-Ra St. Brown being brought up here in Jeremy Fowler's report, is he worth more than that contract that Amon-Ra St. Brown brought? Well, if you look at the numbers where we're going to start off, Amon-Ra St. Brown signed that 4-year, $120 million deal on April 24th. He was actually, funny enough, the highest paid receiver at one point before a day or two, and then A.J. Brown took that mantle from him, which was pretty just funny how the timing worked out there. I never expected A.J. Brown to get that new deal when he did, but A.J. Brown now currently holds that title at $32 million per year. But St. Brown is also up there among the very lucratively paid wide receivers. And in saying that, you look at the season Amon-Ra St. Brown had in 2023 to sort of begin to compare these two players. In 2023, Amon-Ra St. Brown was voted to the first team All-Pro, the first time he was selected for that team. He finished with 10 touchdowns, 1,515 yards, 119 receptions, and 119 receptions. Tied for second in yards, third in touchdowns scored, and also that's where he ranked in the NFL in just those categories. Pretty eye-popping and very wide receiver-esque numbers for Amon-Ra St. Brown there. And then very good numbers, and just based on that, you know, statistical evaluation of Amon-Ra St. Brown, now you kind of get a look at Brandon Aiyuk and what he did in 2023. A bit of a just decline in some of those numbers. Brandon Aiyuk, 7 touchdowns, second team All-Pro in 2023, 1,342 yards, which was 7th in the NFL, and 75 receptions as well, on 59 fewer targets than Amon-Ra St. Brown. So a bit of a context there for you guys, just looking at these two players, getting an idea of how these numbers sort of play out. You know, the numbers are one thing, but also why these numbers are the way that they are. Not that Brandon Aiyuk had bad numbers. You know, those are very good for Brandon Aiyuk, that I think has slowly grown into more of a maybe fringe wide receiver one at this point. You know, for me, I would like to see more of these sort of seasons stack up for him, but Jeremy Fowler continued on in his report and stressed that Brandon Aiyuk is not looking to be the highest paid receiver, but he feels that he's done enough at this point to earn around that $30 million mark in his contract. And the 49ers, looking at their options now, it's not necessarily do this number, give me this number, or move on, because they do have the option of franchise tagging him in 2025. He'll be a free agent, so that option will be available for the 49ers. And now you kind of look at these two a little bit closer, and Aiyuk in the last 2 years has eclipsed 60 receptions for the first time compared to his first 2 years where he was under that 60 reception mark to start his NFL career. And also, he in his last 2 seasons also just eclipsed 1,000 yards also for the first time these last 2 seasons compared to his first two. And also, his touchdowns have jumped as well. In his first 2 years, he scored only 5 touchdowns in both his first and second year. Then, the last 2 years, he has exceeded that with 7, and I want to say 8 touchdowns the year before that. So, a slow development for Brandon Aiyuk. His first 2 years, feeling him out a little bit, trying to determine what kind of player you're going to get. Then, recently, the last few years, he has grown more into that type of player that I think he sees himself as, and that the 49ers are very happy with. I'm sure to have him, Debo, George Kittle, and Christian McCaffrey all there under the same team there for him as well. And now you look at Amon-Ra St. Brown, similarly to Brandon Aiyuk, over their career period, over that span of how long each of them have been in the NFL. Amon-Ra St. Brown has been a bit more involved, I guess I would say, earlier on than Brandon Aiyuk with the Detroit Lions. 90 receptions minimum in each of the 3 seasons he has been in the NFL, so that has exceeded the amount of receptions Aiyuk has at 60 minimum. You know, Amon-Ra St. Brown has had no less than 90 in each year that he's been in the NFL. So that's one thing that sort of gives them the upper hand there. Then also, it is important to point out that Amon-Ra St. Brown has received a lot more targets than Brandon Aiyuk, and I'll touch more on that point in just a little bit. But he also has had no less than 900 yards in either of his 3 seasons as well, whereas Brandon Aiyuk sort of flirted around the 500s to 700 range in his first 2 years. Then he made that jump to the 1,000-yard mark in the last 2 years. So again, maybe more consistency with Amon-Ra St. Brown since he got into the league compared to Brandon Aiyuk. But right now it seems like they're both almost at the same level. That's where the biggest point comes up for me with this whole situation with the two receivers and sort of comparing both of them. The biggest disclaimer really is just the role each of them serve with their respected team. The amount of talent that each of the teams have at their disposal, I think, plays into some of these numbers and some of the reasonings behind you might get some of these numbers and why some people might hold Amon-Ra St. Brown a little bit higher, at least I do, than Brandon Aiyuk at this moment. The Lions, at their disposal, at the top of their talent pool, skill player position roles as of right now, Amon-Ra St. Brown's probably at the top of that list. Then you follow that up with maybe Sam Laporta, then maybe Jahmyr Gibbs, David Montgomery. The most talented and the number one guy you want with the ball at his hands would be Amon-Ra St. Brown to the Lions compared to what the situation is like in San Francisco where you have Brandon Aiyuk, and he might be second on that list compared to, or actually he might even be third on that list if you look at Christian McCaffrey, who had a tremendous season last year. He gets the ball a ton. Then you have Debo, who not only catches passes as well as Brandon Aiyuk, but he gets the ball handed off to him as well. So that's another thing that might elevate him a little bit more than Aiyuk. Then you get to Brandon Aiyuk based on the trajectory that he's been going at. Then you still have George Kittle as well to throw the ball to. Kyle Juszczyk as well. I'll throw him in there and how often the 49ers use them. There's a lot more variety on the 49ers team, and there's a lot more targets to share among more people than there is the Detroit Lions. So that's one of the main reasons why Amon-Ra might have the better numbers, might have the more chance to prove himself more often than not than Brandon Aiyuk. Not to say that Amon-Ra is a bad player. I think he's slowly growing into one of the best in the league, but the chance that he's had to prove himself and show his abilities, I think, has been greater than that of Brandon Aiyuk. And the cap situation, when you're talking about this amount of money for Aiyuk, is a big factor, especially if they feel that Juwan Jennings and their rookie that they just drafted, Ricky Pearsall, could be similar if both of them can sort of produce similar numbers to Brandon Aiyuk, and they're obviously cheaper, maybe the 49ers, if Brandon Aiyuk won't move off of that $30 million mark, maybe they'll start to consider moving Brandon Aiyuk on if they think these two guys can sort of produce what Aiyuk can do together. Maybe we can get some better return for Brandon Aiyuk if we trade him somewhere else and get something at least out of him rather than losing him in free agency. That's one way the 49ers can look at this. Also, say they try and keep Aiyuk and also Brock Purdy, who they have to pay eventually in the future when his contract is due. Both of them, if they try and keep both of them, how does that sort of set off the rest of the team? Because both of them, they are looking for big numbers in their respective markets. And right now, the 49ers are projected to be I want to say $23.9 million over the salary cap in 2025. So that's also something else. If you want to pay Brock Purdy around $50 million where the quarterback market is of right now, and you're going to be over the cap, and you want to try and keep Brandon Aiyuk at that $30 million price range that is reported, how is the rest of the team going to look? Because Juwan Jennings is also looking for a new contract. He could move on. He is a restricted free agent, so different rules apply to him. But, that is a lot of asking out of the rest of the team if you're going to allocate so much money to Aiyuk and Brock Purdy, plus all the money you have to McCaffrey as the highest paid running back, George Kittle, Deebo Samuel. Can that all fit in the books and you still have this great juggernaut team that you've been able to field for the rest or for the recent seasons in the NFL to have so much success that you've had, I think is a serious question. And overall, just to close out this segment and sort of give my feelings on Brandon Aiyuk, really, I would honestly feel a lot better if I could see one more year out of these sort of numbers that Brandon Aiyuk has produced, because right now I'm seeing the slow development and it looks like he is getting there. This is really the first year where he's put up legit wide receiver one numbers. So he has proven it, but is it going to be consistent? Can he do it for at least 2 years? Can I at least get 2 years out of him? That's really where I would feel safer giving him this amount of money if he stacks up this year and puts up better or at least the same numbers next year. I would feel more comfortable giving him that money if I could see it out of him one more year. But then at that point, if you wait it out and play out his contract, he will be a free agent. Of course, you can franchise tag him, but eventually, when you do want to pay him, he could be a bit more expensive than that $30 million per year mark. So that's something the 49ers have to consider. By waiting and really seeing the value Brandon Aiyuk has, it could end up costing them more than taking the gamble on him right now. So we at least got some clarity of where this situation is sort of heading, but honestly, I don't think it made it any easier for the 49ers and for anybody to make the determination. But let me know what you guys think. Would you guys give this amount of money to Brandon Aiyuk or potentially try and get something out of him through a trade or some sort of deal like that? But in saying that, we will move on with the rest of the show. We're going to get into another break right here real fast, and when we come back, talking about Aaron Rodgers and his offensive coordinator, Nathaniel Hackett. It didn't look great last year, but Aaron Rodgers is emphasizing for more trust in him and Nathaniel Hackett. I'll give you the reasons why he wants more trust in them for the New York Jets. A lot of pressure on the Jets coming up, so Aaron Rodgers is going all in on Nathaniel Hackett, and why that is, I'll provide those reasons in just a few seconds. Don't go anywhere.